Leicester City are still alive here. Balotelli, Aguero! Scores it quickly, Origi!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another show of the
The cool down.
Yeah, the cool down, guys. Guys, not usual guys. The Toon Army slash what do they call you? The Backstreet Boy from the Toon Army. That's what they call you. Then we've got Matty, aka Matinho. If for example, if Mourinho had to be short in English, he'd be Matinho over here. That's who he'd be, and obviously the Spurs fan. And then we've got none other than the reserve mascot for Arsenal, the Dengasaurus, Denga Wonga. Sorry, I actually said your name backwards. Wonga Denga. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the show.
What's happening? What's happening?
Hey.
Exciting weekend of football to digest. Exciting weekend. I mean, Claudio, you defied the odds, eh? I think we all said that we'd be against you. We thought that Leicester would come through, but as you guys do, you pull it out the hat, and you are probably, if not more than likely, the favourites at the moment, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they did very well. They did very well.
If you can do that without what 8-9 players, I mean, it's scary for the rest. But Maddie, I'm sure you chuffed. Great result for you. Two shots on target and 2-0 win. Classic Mourinho, perfect.
It was pretty perfect, and Scott's got it right. I'm more than happy to talk about Spurs when we're winning.
It's definitely no coincidence that Matt always makes an appearance when his side do well. But you know what? Wonga, on the other hand, let's go. We actually got to change his name to Big Balls Wonga, because he shows up when his team are not doing so well all the time. So thank you very much for joining us, Wonga.
If he had to wait for Arsenal to be doing well, he'd never be around.
Exactly. Yeah, but let's kick off with the first result of the. It was the first game of the weekend and the first result, and it begins with a guy whose hair seems a bit more frazzled than usual, and he says it's because his dogs ate his fiber cables. We all said that's the same excuse kids are using nowadays when they can't get their homework done. But Nick, 2-0 to Chelsea. You were hopeful of a positive result. It didn't quite happen.
I think it was never in doubt. I mean, from the first kick of the ball, it was classic Steve Bruce. You know, we pass the ball backwards, and we just pump it forward, and we hope. And unfortunately, it is so predictable. And you know, Chelsea are a good team, and we can give them credit. But anyone would have beaten us. Scott, that's enough out of you. But anyone would have beaten us on that day. Slightly frustrated again, but you know, to be expected. Like I said, there was no real plan B. The changes didn't make sense. I think we had 18% or 20% possession in the first half, so you've got no chance really. I thought their goal was arguably a foul. There wasn't much talk.
Oh no! You're reaching, and I can tell you why.
Let me finish though.
I will let you finish, because I'm actually shocked by that whole scenario. But
I'm talking based on what's been given by VAR. To be honest with you, like if we're going to talk consistency, you know, I've seen that overturned. You know, but to be fair, he didn't fix his feet, and they should have been 1-0 up already. At 1-0 down, I think we had a great chance with Isaac Hayden, and if he puts that away, arguably again, he was open goals. If he scores that, I think they go back to VAR and they don't give that as a handball. But if you look at Man United's game, it was a handball. It was the exact same scenario, and the guy was 2 yards away and he couldn't get his hand out the way. So I think at 1-1, you know, as Steve Bruce says, his classic saying, we play against teams like this and we try to stay in the game until 20 minutes and see what we can get. It is just so backwards. It's so dinosaur-like for your entertainment. But at the end of the day, for me, it was predictable, and like I said, we needed a bit of luck, and I thought we could potentially get something out of it. But it was never in doubt once the game started, and I saw us shape up and sort of sit with 7 players, seven players. That's how we defended the game. But yeah, Claudio, you tell me, what are your thoughts on that first goal?
No, so before we talk about the first goal, I'm just thinking about this whole scenario. Was it a case of Newcastle just being below average and, Chelsea just showing up, or were Chelsea actually as good as what people are saying they were?
Chelsea were good, but I mean, if they're going to be talking about themselves as title challengers, Liverpool would have given us 5 or 6. To be very honest with you, it should have been a lot more, and we were 1-0 down at half time, but we also had 1 or 2 chances when there was a lapse in concentration from the Chelsea sort of back four, or when we actually played out their press. Surprisingly enough, when Longstaff tried to get onto the ball, Jolinton actually had a decent game. He held the ball up quite well, and he seemed like a little bit of a threat. And Maximum, I think him and Bruce have sort of fallen out, because I think he's been moved out of position, and that's a big worry for me, because he's always the first player to be pulled off, and he's always the one that I think can get us something. It might be a free kick, it might be a cross, it might be a goal. And I mean, he was some of the changes. I mean, we had Jonjo Shelvey on the bench, and we had no sort of creativity in the midfield. So, I mean, he was taking off wide players to bring on strikers. When we needed to chase the game, we needed to put strikers on, keep the wide players on, and maybe pull a defender off and go forward the back. But Bruce is not capable of that. If I can tell you about a stat that I saw, or a couple of stats, and I'll only name a few of them. Steve Bruce is, in his history of management and the history of the Premier League, he's got the lowest percent possession than any other Premier League than any other Premier League manager. He's got the lowest amount of shots on goal. He's got the lowest amount of touches in the attacking box. He's got the most amount of blocks, and he's got the most amount of goalkeeper saves. So that just tells you everything. And that's his history of the coach. That's not just with us.
Yeah, but you know what I find interesting about that, though, forget about the stat, is that if your manager is setting up the way he sets up, it's a very defensive setup. Sure. For me, it was extremely alarming the way in which both goals were conceded. So there wasn't much work. They didn't have to break Newcastle down. So we talk about the first goal they suffered, the Fernandes goal. You talk about VAR giving, and I completely hear the inconsistency where certain things are given and others aren't. My biggest issue with that whole scenario was Fernandes and his body positioning. I don't even think you get a 6-year-old in under 7s who positioned his body the same way. He gets caught out and he's facing his own goal, and then he uses the wrong foot to try and clear it across his body, and then he sticks into his own net, and then he's clutching at straws going, guys, I was fouled. So I was like, when I saw that, I was like, that's bullshit. Give that a goal just because that's poor defending.
And ultimately, I think also it sort of confused the goalkeeper, because that was also in an area where the goalkeeper could have come. So if he's facing his own way, he either takes charge and clears the ball. He clears the ball from where the ball comes from, I would say. Or as it's coming across his body, he hooks that ball right out with his right foot, but he didn't know what he was doing. Or the keeper needs to take control. So, yes, I agree. But, I mean, going back to where it all comes from, for me, I like to match up in the midfield. We can't match up in the midfield when we play with 5 at the back. So they're always going to have all of the ball. So runners are constantly running from deep in behind. Runners are running from a high line up or dropping into pockets and receiving and turning. It's just far too easy. And Longstaff and Hayden were pretty much told to just sit and wait and shuffle and wait and shuffle. And whenever you get the ball, let's kick it forward and hope. So, a little bit frustrating. Probably not the games you would expect us to win, but you would like a team that sort of tries, and that's sort of the plea from the Newcastle fans. We just want to try. There's a lot of pundits that say Newcastle fans are very entitled, and they say that we won Champions League football and European football. The fact of the matter is we've had a lot of European football and, sort of high finishes compared to some of the teams that are there right now. And we just want a team that tries, We know we're far off that, but we don't try. And I think that's the biggest frustration.
And we're going to talk about it just now. Sorry, go ahead, Wonga. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I can understand Nick's frustration in that terms. In terms of saying that, I also wouldn't say that they're entitled. I mean, if I looked, I don't want to jump into my game quickly, but just looking back at the last time Leeds played Arsenal, and the team that started, they said Henry put 4 behind the net. I think Raul Perez scored 1. But the team that started, I mean, there was Vera. But I mean, you guys, we know all the names. Don't have to go through them. But I mean, now we're in a different position, and I'm probably feeling the same. Is that we want that Champions League football.
Yeah.
So I can understand what Nick is saying. And then also, I watched just another one. Sorry, the Newcastle game itself. I also felt, it's the first time I actually went out and watched the game. Obviously, they're playing Chelsea. Saint Maximum on the wing. Geez, that guy. If I was manager, I'm playing him whole game. And you're getting someone like him, especially if you got the players that you have. You're getting someone like him doing that on the other wing. And you are definitely probably going to get a goal or 2 playing against a team like Chelsea, because they really did battle with him when he was on the field. But obviously Steve Bruce had different plans.
His changes didn't make sense. I will give him credit, and I think he was hearing me last week when I was shouting at the TV, but I mean, he makes all his changes generally in the 81st, 82nd minute when the game's done. So we had made all 3 changes by the 70th minute. Personally, I mean, we did get an injury with Lascelles going off, but I would have had Carroll and Shelby on. That was non-negotiable. Almiron was a great impact, and he's technically so superb that he wins fouls in sort of areas that you wouldn't expect, and his ball retention for such a small guy is rather decent. But I would have you put it on a striker, but then you're taking off a wide player. Just for me, it doesn't make sense, because how's the ball going to get to the wide player? So for me, obviously, very disappointing once again. That's a decent comment, Marcus, but he's just signed a new contract, and I tell you what, someone's going to come in for big money for him.
But he's dangerous. He's very dangerous.
Sorry, Nick. Here's the thing: is like when you're looking, we're going to speak about. I wanted to say this earlier. We're going to speak about Tottenham, and Matt's already like he's got this inner I don't know. Smile. There's just so much. There's like so much like positive vibes coming from the Tottenham camp right now. But when you're comparing the 2 setups in both games, the tactics were somewhat similar to a certain extent, but the desire was different in both players. And if we look, or both sets of players, and if you're looking at the Newcastle thing, you've got your player like an Almiron, like you've mentioned, you've got a Saint Maximum, and you've got these sort of players who just seem so tired of doing the same thing week in, week out. Whereas in the Spurs thing, they can change it a little bit. I mean, the second goal that they concede, from inside their own half, they literally just let Timo Werner run the whole pitch. In between two defenders, he just ran right through them. Nothing happened. One of them could have stuck a leg out, taken a card for that. Not one of them did that.
This is the thing for me. I don't understand it. I was taught, I was an outfield player, but we've played in the same teams. Wonga, we've played in the same teams where, we're not playing at a professional level, but we've been taught these things. So my concern is, and I honestly think it, like, you can bash your manager and you can bash anyone in football. And who am I to say that Steve Bruce is an accomplished manager? He's won a couple of championship titles, but it doesn't look like the players are coached. It honestly just looks like they get together and they probably have a set standard routine through the week, and then they get together, do a bit of shape and pattern. And the shape and pattern essentially must be just shadow play without the ball, because they don't ever have the ball. So for me, it's just, people say, the stats are very similar to, a Rafa Benitez. But Rafa Benitez, we had progression. Players were improving. And I've seen players go backwards. I mean, Sean Longstaff, they were touting as, someone who could potentially play for England. He can't even control a ball at the moment. His brother looks better than him. So, I mean, for me, the squad has really gone backwards, and I see us in a bit of a fight now. We're 6th from bottom. We've got a couple of points on the board, and it's very inconsistent. But, if it continues like this, losses just start to accumulate. Bad form starts to accumulate. There's bad vibes in the change room. players, the transfer windows around the corner. Players are going to want to start
looking.
Yeah.
Well, there's based on that fact alone, you've already got the shit that Almiron's agent stirring up, saying, Inter Milan are coming after him, Atletico Madrid are coming, which I personally feel is a bit far-fetched. But I mean, it's already creating a bit of a disharmony sort of within the change room and with the coach and the player and. There are a lot of those things.
You might say that, and those players have done that under Steve Bruce. They've done, so say Maximum, for example, Callum Wilson to an extent, and Almiron. Let's use those three players. They've performed, for lack of better words, under Steve Bruce with no real direction. Imagine if they play with half decent players and a manager as a brain. I think they might flourish. And I used to get so upset with when players used to leave my club. Like as a youngster, I used to hate them afterwards. But obviously you grow up and you realize that good for them. Why would they want to come to training or come to a match and touch the ball probably twice in the game if you've only got 30%
Exactly.
the whole match? Yeah, essentially that's what it is. So unfortunately, it is alarming, and there's a bit of a campaign at the moment for Bruce out, but we've got so many issues upstairs where he's not going to sack Bruce. He didn't sack Pardew. Pardew was arguably one of our second worst managers, and he's just going to stay tight until he can maybe sell the club and then let the new owners make a decision.
Yeah, but what's interesting to note, we were focusing obviously a lot on Newcastle because this is your team, Nick. But from the Chelsea perspective, one of the good things that Chelsea are doing is they've kept another clean sheet. Yeah. And from a defensive record, last season, just so everyone's aware of this, they conceded the second most goals from corners throughout the whole of Europe last season. And that's one of the areas that they've hugely improved on in these 9 games so far to the start of the season. And it's largely a combination between playing zonal and marking. Obviously, having guys that are stronger headers on the line and bringing the likes of a Mendy and it's a big difference between having Azpilicueta and a Mendy, where players are a lot more confident having a keeper who's coming out and catching the thing. Huge difference. One of the other interesting things currently coming out of the Chelsea camp at the moment is that Giroud is going to be looking for a new club come January because he's very fearful of losing his place in the Euro squad. So that's something else for them to lose. Not that I don't think it's going to affect Chelsea much. I don't know. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, look, I think Chelsea looked really good this weekend. Obviously, Nick's right. Newcastle set up in a way that did them lots of favours. They were really defensive, and Steve Bruce is how he's done it. And Scott made an interesting point in the comments just now, but up until a couple of weeks ago, statistically, Newcastle were actually looking really, really good, and actually kind of had a base they could have built on. But I think what's happened is, and the comparison you drew with Spurs is an interesting one in terms of the mentality, the tactics. Tactically, they looked very similar this weekend, but the mentality was completely different. And Chelsea, on the other hand, their mentality was completely right. They're very professional. They were obviously very well drilled. They knew what they were doing. They weren't perfect. I think there is still. I think Chelsea are going to get better than they were this weekend. I think they've got a lot to still show us, and I do think there's still a lot for them to do this season. But they did exactly what they needed to do to beat Newcastle, and it was true. It didn't look like Newcastle were ever going to lay a glove on them, and I think that's pretty damning. I
think Lampard. If you guys saw him and his sort of body language, every chance that they missed at 1-0, he was fuming, and he was worried. I mean, we stole it at the end last year. They should have walked the game 4-5 nothing, and we ended up scoring in the last minute of the game, smash and grab. And I think that's sort of he was concerned because it is a potential banana skin, because you've seen those games go one way or the other, and they were speaking about Werner, and they spoke about him last season. When sort of the commentators,
he missed the sitter as well.
When the commentators were working on his games last year, they said it sometimes takes him 3 or 4 chances to actually take his chance, and that might be a bad trait. Although he does get into positions, and he still his goal record is so great. So it is quite interesting to note, and I think they will match right. They will progress, and they've got a big challenge this weekend to actually see if what they have in place is actually as good as what it is, because I wouldn't really sort of benchmark if they are on the right route based on last weekend's result, simply because there was no real resistance, to be fair.
And you know, and I like that point because now realistically, guys, it's the first time since 1985 after 9 games that Spurs are top of the log. And talk about who's going to be challenging for the Premier League. Right now, in my mind, personally speaking, I think it's a 2-horse race. Chelsea are going to be there for top 4. I think Man City, there's a lot of work to be done there, but I think Spurs are the guys that are going to be the real challengers here for this title. Forget about anyone else, which brings us to you, Matt.
Yeah.
Matteo.
Yeah.
Spurs,
it was an amazing weekend. And I mean, you know, I wasn't born till 86, so it's the first time in my life we've been this high at this point. So it was fantastic. The game was positive on a couple of notes. So we've been seeing for a while the progression of Spurs under Mourinho and our evolution. I've mentioned it a few times. We're looking more and more like a Mourinho side. This was one of those games where we implemented a Mourinho game plan, and over and above the game plan itself, there were so many individual performances across the field that were hugely positive. Eric Dyer looked better than he's looked in ages. He was really solid at the back. You always feel he's prone to a mistake. You always feel he might just, you know, lose his head, but he held it together. And even when Alderweireld went off injured, I thought, oh, this could be, you know, I've seen this before. And Dyer really stepped up, and it was a awesome performance. Højbjerg across the field. He's been a phenomenal signing for us. What a bargain at 15 million. He's just made such a difference to our midfield. He's
real
leading
monster.
the stats. Yeah, and he's leading the stats for interceptions and tackles and turning around play and stuff. He's given us what was missing last year in that midfield. So we looked amazing all along. And Harry Kane continues to be, I think he's been a phenomenal striker for several years. But now in what he's done with his game and what Mourinho's, and you can only assume it's down to discussions that they've had and the plans that they've discussed, he's become a really world-class player. He's more than just a striker. He's still scoring goals at a rate that any striker in the league would be pleased with, but he's also doing so much more than that. His involvement in build-up play and his assist for Lo Celso's goal right at the end was just, the vision was perfect. I lost my mind.
He's become that real shithouse player that with the end product. He's assisting, he's scoring, he's kicking the shit out of people, he's diving, he's just doing a bit of everything, and he's leading.
Roy of the Rovers stuff, you know. It's phenomenal.
I think he's literally Mr. Spurs.
Mr. Spurs, yeah. Mourinho came out saying, I mean, I think he won man of the match after the game, and it's funny now that Kane's doing all of this work, and now the conversation's going, oh yes, but now guys, this is a modern striker. Modern strikers can still be a man of the match without scoring goals. And I'm like, wait, guys. Firmino, I can't even say it right now. Bobby has been doing it for how many seasons? Yeah, I was like, he's been doing it for how many seasons? Everyone's saying this is so shit. But anyway, nonetheless, you were talking about Højbjerg.
I mean, across the field, Spurs, everyone did their job, and it was one of those games where you could kind of see. And you know, I don't know if you guys saw any of the stuff Man City's official Twitter account was doing. Like, they couldn't believe they were losing. It was phenomenal. But the truth is that although there's always a part of me that felt, oh, they could still score 3 right at the end. And I'm sure if Richard was here, he'd be reminding me, you know, just exactly why. But there was, at the same time, there were long periods of the game where, as much as City had a lot of control and they were taking shots, it never felt like there was I can only remember 2 times where it looked like Lloris was really tested, and the rest of the time it felt like Spurs controlled the game. It was kind of a perfect example of game management. Yeah. That said, you know, the talk about the title thing that, you know, Claudia, you brought it up. I don't know. I think the interesting thing is between now and Christmas. Between now and Christmas, Spurs are playing Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, and Leicester. And on Boxing Day, I think we play Wolves. And if we get to Boxing Day still here or hereabouts, then I think I'll start to feel, wow, this could really be on the cards. Because I think that as much as we're doing really well at the moment, the big tests we've had were a United who really didn't show up, and a City who are themselves also in a bit of a funk. This isn't prime, you know, this isn't peak City. So I think the next sort of 5-6 games are gonna really really test Spurs' credentials, and also really test how much of an impact Mourinho can have. I think this is where we find out whether he's still got it or not. So it's going to be interesting.
But here's the thing, though. That performance reminded me of the Champions League game when when he was still at Inter and they won the treble, and it was a game against Barcelona, was that big defining moment where Barcelona was the best team in the world at the moment in time.
Yeah.
And he had Samuel Eto'o tracking back at right back, but there was still so much control, even though they had no ball. And that's what it felt. It felt exactly like it. It almost felt like the side that have completely bought into what he's doing now. And, like if one of the things I've got to really observe and be like, everyone talks about Mourinho only being a three-season sort of club man. And you start thinking about it and you go back to his greatest successes. You go back to Porto, his side was the underdog side, won the Champions League. You go to Inter Milan, obviously winning the treble was something huge. But again, in the Champions League, they had this underdog mentality. And the clubs where he hasn't lasted that long or beyond that point are the clubs that are supposedly the bigger clubs that are expecting a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's come in at the right time for Spurs that are somewhat on this sort of trajectory. My pronunciation's gone to shit today. Sorry, Scott. Just keep those like little abbreviations coming. Firmino, coming into this sort of thing. But he's at the right place at the right time for his Spurs, and it feels like he's got the main guy on board who's Kane, and everyone else is just following suit. And this is the difference. And I feel like last season in February they beat Man City, but it felt like a very lucky win. This time it felt like they went completely toe to toe, and they completely destroyed Man City. Man City were asking sort of all sorts of questions. They had no answers. That was going on.
Yeah, definitely. The stars seem to be aligning. I agree with you. I think we're in a perfect space to get someone like Mourinho. I think we're the kind of club where he does thrive. We are very similar in terms of in terms of stature. We're probably not even as big as Inter Milan. Probably, and in terms of what people expect from us, it's similar. The people they expect us to be there or thereabouts, but not really win it. And I think in many ways that's where he thrives. And where he is really, really good is understanding, picking out the key players in the system and maximizing them. He did it at Chelsea. He built that spine, Terry, Lampard, Drogba, and they each understood their exact jobs across the field. Everyone knew what they're supposed to do, and it performed every time. And it feels like he's getting there with Spurs. Højbjerg knows what he's supposed to be doing. Dyer knew what he was meant to be doing. Reguilon, when he's on, he's just perfect down the left. He's exactly what we were missing there. And obviously Kane and Son. Son's goal as well, it wasn't set up by Kane this time around, but it's perfect. It's peak Son what he's doing at the moment. Yeah. Quick running into space, quick finishing.
It's also interesting what you say, Matt, about Christmas, but I think another defining moment is when Europa League starts again in February. Yeah. Because it's going to be a hectic Christmas period. FA Cup's going to start. He's going to want to win something. So I think he's going to try and stay in every competition as long as possible, because the league is obviously as tough as it is. The backdoor entry into the Champions League is Europa, but he loves the Europa League. He's won it. I think he's won it twice. I know he won it with Man United and with Porto. So it's a tournament that he knows pretty well, and I think if you can get to February, I think in a good sort of shape in terms of how much depth you still have. I think that's going to be key, because the Europa League is a long tournament, and you're traveling like we spoke about. You travel all over the place. It's not just your sort of glamorous nations within Europe. It's your Ukraine's and Cyprus's and Kazakhstan's.
I mean that's you're completely right. It's not just going to be one point where we're judged or not. I mean, we've got to get through Christmas really well to give ourselves that chance. Then we've got to get through the return of European football, and to win the league. I mean, Liverpool proved it. You got to be top of your game every week. Look at Liverpool, not last season, the season before. They were phenomenal the entire way through the season and still finished second because City were even more phenomenal. So, Spurs will have to have the best season that they're ever going to have, and every new challenge they're going to have to defeat it. And these next 6 games are just the first of those next period of challenges. So, I mean, I think every Spurs fan I know is trying to keep our feet on the ground. We're realistic. We've supported this team long enough to know it could all come crashing down. But there's also an excitement that I don't think I've felt properly in a while. Even the season Leicester won, Tottenham were there or thereabouts. As much as we look back on it and think, oh, that should have been the season we won. That should have been our season. At the time, not a lot of Spurs fans really thought we could win it. It just, it always felt, and then we ended up finishing third in a 2-horse race anyway. So the this time around, though, that it is a bit different. There's something, even the way the players carry themselves. You look at them against City. They weren't freaking out. They went 1-0 up, and then they gave away a load of possession, and no one started losing their head. Dyer didn't run off and kick someone in the knee. It was really managed, controlled, and it was good. I mean, something could go wrong. Kane could break something, or Son could get called up to the army again. You just don't know. But at the moment, it looks really good, and I think it's a really exciting time. And it's a fun time to be a Spurs fan. And I mean, it could be worse, Wonga. There's a much more horrible place.
But let's talk about something that isn't great at the moment. It's come out, what's been reported today, that you guys have recorded a loss of 63.9 million pounds profit loss at this point in time. Obviously, COVID's had a huge impact on all of this, and the projection is that overall at the come end of the season is going to be a sort of loss in the 150 million mark. Here's where it's not so bad for you guys. Is based on, if we're talking about, I know Nick's mentioned Europa and them doing well in the Europa, regardless of what happens this season. Yeah, it's more likely that Spurs win a trophy than not. I know that's a lot of pressure to be saying that out there, especially talking about jinxes and all that other stuff. But if they win the Europa, to give you an example, Europa in terms of prize money only gets you 40 million pounds. Right? Just coming in the last 16 of the Champions League gets you 56 million pounds. And that's already the difference in terms of the significance of making top four for an Arsenal and. But here's where it gets very interesting for a Spurs, is that the timing of COVID and your new stadium. Right now, your new stadium has brought in, before COVID, or at least brought up more money for you guys from a profit perspective in terms of what Old Trafford are making. I think it increased something like from 50 million to 80 million pounds. I know I'm getting very specific in a certain thing. So this is where I'm just saying, as a Spurs fan, you need to be a bit positive here, is because now with the introduction of fans coming in December and moving on again, and Spurs have transformed the stadium into a multi sort of purpose thing. That money is going to keep flooding in. And if we look in base in terms of what they've spent, this, despite COVID hitting, Daniel Levy firstly managed to sell Eriksen, a player who only had 6 months left on his contract. He's not even playing for Inter right now, for 20 million euros. But they also spent more than what they normally spend. And they spent something in the region of about 120 million pounds in comparison to 88 million pounds. Now, the difference in this whole scenario is that your wage bill from a Spurs perspective still only equates to 180 million pounds. I know I'm throwing a lot of the pounds out here, guys. But Arsenal, just to give you a perspective, Arsenal are sitting on 232 million pounds. Right? And then it goes up to Man United, 284. Then it goes to Liverpool and Chelsea that are on the 3 million pound mark. So you've got a Spurs now who are able to compete and spend money like likes on Ndombele in the 70 million pound range and bring players in on a lot cheaper and still compete. So when COVID comes to an end, the money's going to come in. And if success comes this season, you're only going to build on that, which means for me, the future is a Kane and players built around a Kane. So that's very bright.
Yeah, I mean, Spurs have there's always been criticisms of Levy for different things in terms of not spending on players at the right time and not backing managers when he should and stuff. But at the same time, as a business, Spurs is run very, very well. Financially, they're on a solid footing. They were able to build the new stadium without putting a complete dampener on other sides of the football parts of the business. I mean, you remember when Arsenal first moved into the Emirates, they didn't spend serious money on transfers for a long time, and that was a big sticking point for a lot of the fans. And we've been really lucky in that because it's so well run, we've been able to move into the new stadium, and we have spent on players. And we've often said that Levy hasn't backed the manager, but he clearly has this time round. Him and Mourinho, they knew what they wanted to do, and they got in, and they didn't need to spend huge amounts of money. It would have been nice. There's other players that have been talked about that would have been cool to bring in, but you look at what he did bring in. It was really smart business. And I agree with you. I think what Spurs spend on wages is currently very, but that may change. The pressure, if Spurs were to win something big and then to stay there, to bring in the kind of players who are going to keep us at that level, it may force a rethink of the wage structure, which could cause issues down the line. But for the time being, Spurs is on a solid footing financially, and I think it does bode well. It looks. The key thing is to start backing up with silverware, because I think that's in order to start bringing in the kind of players that Kane deserves to have around him for the next few years. We will have to show that we're a place where you can go to win trophies. So in a big way, there is a lot of pressure on Spurs in the next 2 years to start producing the goods. But it does feel, like I said, it feels good. It feels really positive, more than I've perhaps felt in maybe my whole life. I don't know.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I'm glad you're feeling that right now. Just wait until you guys play Liverpool, then we can have the chat again. But based on what Jason was saying, he says obviously the further that Spurs do go in the Europa, the tougher it's going to be for the league. But I think it's going to get to a point where Mourinho is going to make a decision. And he's going to be like, if he's in for the league, he's going to be focusing on the league. He's not going to give a shit about Europa. He's still going to set up a team to get a result in Europa because he can't do that. I think talking about, again, Newcastle setup versus the Spurs setup, the difference is the one can sit deeper because they got quality on the counter. I know you've mentioned your players, Nick, but at the end of the day, they're not on the same level as a Son and a Kane.
No, 100%.
But let's talk. What I want to talk about before we move on from this game is the Man City factor, the Man City situation, the situation in which Pep Guardiola finds himself in while Wonga downs his water. It's one of those scenarios where, they're a mess right now. Compare last season, the season before, because damn, Wonga's really thirsty. But if you compare it to having Sané up front, Aguero up front, and a Sterling up front, in comparison to what they had on the weekend against Spurs, a Torres, a Jesus, he's a Solskjaer off the bench at best, in my opinion. And then followed up by Mahrez on the right hand side. I mean, there's all sorts wrong. And then you focus on the back as well. I mean, they're completely not aligned. I mean, you've got a great player in Ruben Diaz, but still very young, absolute leader. But the partnership between him and Laporte still has to come about. And then not having a player like Fernandinho in the middle, that's the huge loss for that club, apart from losing David Silva and company. But not having him there to break their play up, because that's what they're amazing for, press up high, win the ball back as soon as they've lost it, and they just weren't doing that against the Spurs. So, Nick, in terms of your opinion, in terms of what Pep Guardiola has to do moving forward, what do you think about this?
I just think in terms of what we had spoken about building up to this game is, the contract was signed on Thursday, the extension, and I think that obviously gives him a bit of time. And just by the look of it and just sort of the makeup of the squad based in comparison to sort of the squads that they've had in the last couple of years, it looks like, Pep's being given the go-ahead to start rebuilding. I don't know if they're saying they're sort of out of the title race already. I don't think Pep would ever say that, but it just looks like they look very toothless at the moment. They create a whole lot. They have a lot of the ball, and they just sort of struggle. And I mean, if they're struggling to sort of break down defenses like your Spurs that set up, that's not going to be the first team that does that. And City were notorious of being able to find a solution regardless. And they did it for a couple of years, and they even arguably did it last season on more than one occasion. And I fear for them because I did think that, at the end of last season, Pep was going to put all his eggs in one basket and go try win the Champions League. And obviously that didn't work out. And I thought maybe this season would maybe be the same, because I think that's what his sort of mandate is to deliver that trophy to the club. But they do really look far off it. I watched Kevin De Bruyne's, and I'd also like your take on Kevin De Bruyne's interview, and he was livid with the decision of their goal being overturned. I personally disagree with him. I thought it was a clear handball. His arm moves towards it. And the thing is, it looks like they're clutching at straws. They look like sort of dead men walking. But I wouldn't write them off yet, because we are still, we're not even at the 10-game mark. They can just go on a run if they want to. But they're not looking like it. So I don't know. I think, Matt, you'll agree with me. They can turn it on when they want to. Listen, they didn't play poorly. They didn't create all those chances because they're a shit team.
But the difference was you've got a Spurs that were like, we've got a job to do here. The manager said we need to be disciplined. We need to keep our shape while we're sharp enough to still be able to attack. City are so comfortable in terms of always attacking, always going forward. They missed that flipping bite in the middle of that monster, Højbjerg that Spurs had, which they normally have in a Fernandinho, that they just didn't have to keep them on their toes, and they were very complacent. I mean, the first goal was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. Keeper was off his line, in my opinion. It was far too off his line.
Even arguably the second as well.
Yeah, and you know what the thing is? Everyone's saying Kane's movement was so incredible. all it was it's a lack of communication between two centre halves and an overzealous sort of Bernardino. Who presses. He should be high up the pitch, sort of winning the ball up there, not in the middle of the park, because that's what happens. You get turned in that scenario. It was just too easy, in my opinion. I think the difference is one team's used to going forward, completely switched off from a defensive point of view, and the other one now, which was similar to that when they had Pochettino, arguably towards the end of his reign. And they've got that grit back, and they understand that to win games, you've really got to dig deep and stick your balls in someone's face, really. Smother it. You got to really smother it. Sorry, Wonga.
For me, Man City, I don't think, they made mistakes. And the thing is, unfortunately, that game, they got punished for them. Spurs only had 2 shots on target that game. We can count the one that was the offside goal, and that would be 3. But if I look, I mean, even the first goal, Michael Owen broke it down after the match at half time. He broke it down quite nicely, where he showed one of the midfielders. It was Bernardo Silva. He should have actually just stayed on his side, stay goal side on the guy, and that was it. But he moved. He got, I don't know. Obviously, playing a match, moved to the wrong position, got caught out. But the defenders did the right thing. One guy went, the other guy was going to cover afterwards. The keeper was the mistake. And I think for me, in many games now, like Nick was saying, even the keeper, the second goal as well, you can even argue that he was off his line there. The season's Man City won. Edison was that difference for them. They always made the right decision coming off the line, making it very difficult for teams to come out behind plays. And in that game, I think for me, he kind of cost his team, because those are literally the only 2 times, like they said, the only 2 shots on target, and he wasn't up to it, and they got their 2 goals. And I think, Pep needs, I'm not saying now bench Edison. I mean, he's done very well. I think it's just one aspect he needs to just work on, is just make sure he makes the right decision when he comes out. Because I've seen it, I can't remember which other game it was as well. It also off his line wrong time. Not needing rather let the defender deal with it, but he didn't come out, and it makes it quite easy for the striker to score the goal. But I don't think, even after the game, Pep Guardiola, they asked him about the handball. I know the players like De Bruyne had a lot to say about it, but Pep, he probably did see it, but he said he didn't see it and he won't comment on it. And I think he just, at this point, I think he's accepted that, look, VAR is going to be what it is. And he can't really blame it for his losses, and he has to just try and work on his team. And I think he's just taking that conscious decision to focus on his team rather than the VAR. Yeah. And I think we'll probably see positive results from now on from them.
Yeah, fair enough. I think he's realized that the battle possibly, I'm not saying he's giving up, but I think he feels like there's a lot more to focus on before he can start challenging again. So don't be surprised at sitting 13th on the table if he goes spending big again in January. So don't be surprised at that. But the next game, guys, the one that was all about one man, and that man being, you guys know who I'm talking about?
Yes, Bruno.
One man. No, not even. I'm talking about David Coote. You know that guy. I just want to talk about this guy. You know, he was meant to be reffing the Liverpool game, and they actually removed him for the game against Leicester. So they removed him, and what they do is they send him to go ref the United game. I mean, the whole game. Firstly, I don't like United. Were they had 1 or 2 chances, but West Brom, I think, were the better side, in my opinion. They gave a real go of it, and they were really unfortunate.
They gave it. 100%.
But then the first penalty, guys, the first one that he gives, and then he retracts after looking at VAR.
Yeah,
my gents.
Guys, I saw people saying that wasn't a penalty. I can't see from any angle where Bruno Fernandes has touched the ball there. He's clearly clipped the guy on his ankle.
Drugs.
His shin pad. Yeah. So I don't know how you even overturned that. He saw
it's ridiculous.
It was crazy.
The man,
I think he was scared.
Yeah, he was scared. Like, I think Ferguson had a word with him, or he had his shirt signed by Ferguson. I don't know what it was, but it was absolute bullshit, because I've seen softer penalties given throughout this whole damn season. That was blatant contact. The guy gets brought down. He has a look at it again. We were like, even the commentators were like, like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
What is the decision? What was the decision to overturn it? That's what I want to know, because I didn't see.
I think he looked and he was like, no. So firstly, I think the Portuguese player, you know how it is. You know, he whispered something in his ear. And we're very persuasive people as a nation, generally speaking. Matt knows. Matt's married to a Portuguese lady. He knows.
I'm constantly overturning penalty decisions at home.
So I think he's whispered something, and I think he's gone with the idea saying, no, the player was exaggerating. So, yeah. But my biggest concern is that, okay, cool, he does that. So he's completely robbed a poor West Brom that are flipping fighting for things at the bottom there. He then goes at the other end of the pitch, literally right after that. The guy takes a shot. The defender turns his back. Doesn't even know where the ball is.
Doesn't know where the ball is at all.
Hits his hand. And he goes, no, penalty. That's a penalty. And then what's the best part? I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's shocking. Yeah. And then he misses the penalty. And then this is what I wanted to ask you, Nick. From a goalkeeper's perspective, this is where I think the game is in all sorts of disarray, apart from VAR and all this other bullshit. You've got a scenario where, players are allowed to do all these funny nonsense run-ups and tinkle toes and all this other cuck story thing. The keeper now has to then retake the penalty because he's gone off his line. How much of an advantage, really, from a percentage perspective, if they're going to go back to goal line technology, we're going to talk about the Liverpool game, if they're going to go with goal line technology and there's like a 10 millimeter difference between whether or not that's a goal or not, how in the hell does like a keeper coming off the line, how does that, like, what percentage does that really give him an advantage?
Okay, so as a goalkeeper, when you are taught as a youngster, you are told to sort of close the angle. So by closing the angle, you always learn to dive forward. So essentially, they try gain ground and make that distance between the ball and them a lot smaller. So essentially, if you walk forward, the goal actually is smaller, just obviously by pure dimensions and physics. But I do agree with you. The rule is now that the keeper has to keep one foot on the line. So you can take a step forward, but the back foot has to stay on. So essentially, as the ball's kicked, that back foot can come off. But if you watch the second penalty, he came off the line again. And I know they were in that stand. Yeah. 100%. So the goalkeeper was a little bit silly from that point of view because, I mean, if he had saved it again, they would have just retaken it. So I do agree that it is a bit frustrating because yes, it seems as though it's a little bit of a a nothing sort of rule, but there is method to the madness. However, I just don't know. I don't know how much of an advantage it is because justice was actually served. It wasn't a penalty, in my opinion.
Yeah, but exactly, it wasn't a penalty. Justice was served, but then because of this rule where strikers are allowed advantages, the keeper has to literally do. Yeah,
that's the thing. Also, because if you think about it, you got that weird staggered run up. Because timing is also a key factor. As a keeper, if you can only take a step when you can take a step, and you start seeing someone take a run up, you're going to time the whole thing. Because if you wait for the ball to be kicked, then it's too late. It's like
and I agree with
having
you.
That weird.
And if you're gonna, I agree with you. If you're gonna, limit goalkeepers to what they can do, some keepers, there used to be that you were allowed to stand in your goal, but now that's been done away with. Your feet have to be on the line. So a foot has to be on the line. So I mean, essentially, the idea of standing in your goals is if you dive in forward, you're still actually in your goals. As the ball's kicked, but you actually have that forward momentum. But for me, if goalkeepers are so limited, why are you allowed to do stop-start run-ups? It is very frustrating because I think you see it here in South Africa a lot. I mean, you see nonsense run-ups here. Stop-start. I mean, I don't know what sort of Bruno Fernandes does. It's like a slow motion. It's
frog. Kermit.
I don't know.
It looked almost painful, to be honest. I'm not sure it was on purpose.
But like for me, I also I can see just like I can see why they're saying the keeper needs to have a foot on the line to close it down. And then if you think about the whole penalty situation, it is the defending team's error. So obviously the advantage now, the penalty, obviously a penalty is always going to be an advantage to the striker, but now you've just made it now you're making it almost close to impossible for the keeper to save it. For me, then if I can understand not coming forward, you're closing down the angle way too much, but I don't understand why. Maybe you would share insight to me, like, is why would they stop the goalkeeper from starting in his net? Because that would make it quite interesting as well. Maybe he can play around his net, also do his things. But for me, that would be better to see.
I think it's just the consistency of being on the line. I think it just sort of makes the rules easier to read and easier to digest. But from that perspective, what was quite interesting is if you look at the penalty afterwards, after he had missed it, no one actually complained about him jumping off the line. I guess it was always going to go back to VAR, but it was quite interesting because they carried on playing. I think it went out for a corner or whatever it was.
For throwing,
everyone was setting up for the corner. So I mean, ideally, you've always got a chance if you've missed a penalty nowadays. You've always got a chance it's going to be retaken.
But Nick, you mentioned again. So when the retake happens, you mentioned again that the keeper's off his line.
Yeah.
And you know what I found very interesting again when we're talking about the run up, you get two ways of saving a penalty. You've got a way where you guess a side, and that way it's become a 50-50. You hoping. In this case, there's three ways now if they go down the middle, whatever the scenario is. But you're choosing a side and you're hoping for the best. Now, for me, what I used to advise goalkeepers or the guys I used to play with was I was always read the body language. If you can put them off from the body language perspective, you've got a chance. And in that scenario, he's read the body language and he's actually trying to guess it. And that's why he comes off his line, because he staggers. And as he comes off, he's decided, he's going this way. And then he just pauses for a minute and then he's off his line. So I was like, in that scenario, that's a lot of crap, because you actually,
against penalty takers like Bruno Fernandes specifically, where he doesn't actually put that much pace on the ball, I would, and generally here in South Africa, I would tell my goalkeepers to do this. I would just watch the ball, to be honest with you. How many times does the ball actually go at pace? And possibly, in an area where it's, impossible for the keeper. He's actually waiting for the goalkeeper to commit. So, I mean, in that situation, if you look at penalties, how many of them are actually in the bottom corner or the top corner with pace? Not many, because you got to, as the penalty taker, you got to have balls to actually do that, because the area is so small. So, there is, keepers will have their ways in which they do it, and that will be comfortable for them. I know guessing, you sort of kind of have a 40% or a 38% chance. I wouldn't say it's 30. I wouldn't say it's 3 equal chances with the down the middle, because your legs can always get sort of the middle part. But I mean, I don't know. It is a bit of a conundrum for goalkeepers. I would personally, against Bruno Fernandes, I would just wait for him. And he's going to side-foot it anyway, and he might actually sort of mess it up, which he's started to do recently. Actually,
I think the keepers are catching on.
They found
the keepers are definitely catching on what he's doing. They're catching on, because even the goalkeeper in that situation, the first one, you could see, Bruno Fernandes is going to jump, then he fakes one position, he goes the other. So he literally went to position Bruno Fernandes faked, and then he jumped the other way, saved it.
Let me ask you guys now, your sort of opinion on Man United. I think this is sort of, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. This is, this isn't a Man United that's going to finish in the top 4 if they continue playing like this. It's unfortunate, because they did do so well after that lockdown, and they worked so hard to get into a position where I thought, damn, they're back. And honestly, I don't know, Matt, what do you think in terms of them actually kicking on? Because they just don't seem like they can kick on.
No, they look to be less than the sum of their parts at the moment. And I think this is one of those results that are actually going to do more harm than good. If Silla was here, he'd probably feel the same, where they've got the 3 points, and therefore Ole's done his job, and there's no need to question him for another week. But they haven't improved. They got really lucky. I mean, we've gone through it in detail now. They definitely didn't deserve to win the game. I think a fair result probably would have been a draw, based on everything West Brom did. But they're stagnating. They're just going to keep going in this holding pattern between. They'll have a week or two of crisis talk. They'll pull off a couple of really dodgy looking results, manage to kind of placate the board, and Ole will stick around. I think he'll end up being here till the end of the season, just because I think that's what United are going to do. They're going to
Yes,
wait and
thank you.
I think they're going to be there. He's going to be there till the end, and because I think he'll always do just enough to justify the board giving him one more week, and they're going to finish 7th or 8th, and then and then they'll replace him in the off season and spend a lot of money again, because we've talked about it before. The pattern, when they don't finish top 4, they spend a king's ransom to get back there, and then when they're in the top 4 that season, they spend nothing and collapse. And I think and they are a side at the moment. None of the players look to be improving, and they've got some fantastic talent across the squad, but none of them seem to be really stepping up and kind of being more than they were, which I think is an indictment on obviously the feeling within the camp. And I just think they're going to keep. They're not going to progress. It's going to be this weird holiday, which is probably better for the rest of us. I mean, United can't do
like Jason says, give him a new contract, please. I mean, I think
the other 19 clubs will all chip in for it. Go fund me Ole's new contract.
To cap off, gone are the days of those sort of Scholes penalties where the run up was like 20 meters and he just smashed the thing one side. Gone are those days. But the next game we want to talk about, and this is the game that Scott is getting ready to give us facts for, and we'll show them. We'll show your facts, Scott, if you put them up on the screen. But Wonga, guys were trying to tell you. They were trying to tell you last week that this was going to happen, and you were absolutely adamant that they were losing their minds, like they knew nothing about football. And yet the result was this. I mean, a couple of talking points, but overall, what is your feeling about all of this? I don't even know what to call it. Arteta ball.
Yeah, look, it is. I guess watching the game was horrible, and I mean, especially when you saw the starting lineup, you thought, okay, maybe there's a bit of hope here. Pulling Aubameyang down the middle, Wilcock behind him. Okay, that was a great area for me. Pepe down the wing, he's starting now, exactly what he wants, and then second half he goes and he decides to go headbutt someone. I can't understand it. And I mean, even the bull to the, I think, not that maybe not. Let me not say I completely do not understand it. Maybe I think there's obviously a frustration, probably definitely frustrated in some way or another. I don't know what it is. And also, I mean, hearing beforehand, I mean, you've got David Luiz and Ceballos beating each other up. I don't know what the hell's happening on that. But I understand that happens sometimes in a training session. But I mean, yes, as in Arsenal's, what happened with Arsenal, I just don't know. But I mean, let's say talk about the field. Leno definitely kept us in. That guy's not on the field, and we would have lost that game. If we also didn't have the left upright, no, the right upright, and the crossbar, also, we would have been
definitely a man of the match of the game. What was the framework?
Those three were our best players in the game: the right upright and the crossbar and Leno. Everyone else, I think we could have stole it with Saka when he was 1-on-1. Aubameyang passing the through ball, squeezed it through, but Saka and I think one area that guy should work on is his finishing, because he'll get many more like that. But
Saka reminds me of like a second-hand Sterling when he was at the same age.
Look, I think your Sterling when Sterling was that age, he was. I think he's probably was more dangerous than he is now. 1v1. I can guarantee you that. Sterling was a very dangerous player. What is this? Bruno Fernandes, 26. Exactly.
Not only that, Scott. Also, you've got Son, who scored 9 goals by himself, and that's the entire amount of goals that Arsenal have scored as a squad this season so far. Another
they haven't scored a goal from open play since October 4th or something.
Yeah,
you would have thought that. I mean.
And more, and you know what? Like a Zet, who's a striker, goals aren't being scored, and yet he's sitting on bench. Like then you really got to ask, like, it's time to start looking for other clubs, because your future is nowhere.
No, it's true, but I don't know what it is. I mean, now you're playing Aubameyang down the middle, still not taking any shots. And I think teams have figured it out. Arsenal last season, all the goals are coming from who? One man, Aubameyang. Don't let him get the ball. Don't let him see a chance. you're not going to concede, and that's pretty much working with many of the
I
teams.
think Aubameyang
Especially
regrets signing that new contract.
Yeah, he's
I'm sure.
looking rough. Are we sure it's
No way, it's
really
not-
him? Have we checked this out? Because the man is looking like it's been a rough year. I mean, 2020 has been rough on us all, but I mean, he's basically forgotten how to do his job. You know.
Well, Gabon had him sleeping on an airport floor.
I heard about that. I
Yeah.
heard about that. And then he had to go back to Arsenal. He was probably one of the few Gabonese players who was asking if there was more time at the airport.
Wow.
No, man. Guys, take it easy on me. He didn't want to rock up today because he's like, I'm becoming the roasting guy. He shows up every week and just to get roasted. Yeah, man. But if we're looking at Arsenal, Wonga, I want to ask you one thing, boys. What are your feelings surrounding the whole Pepe? I mean, Pepe, he starts the game. So you're thinking this is a good opportunity for the guy. He has one or two moments and he's got that in him. Obviously, he's a frustrated figure as it is because he hasn't been getting game time. He gets given a chance. And in the game itself, the team's just playing poorly. So he's highly frustrated throughout the game. And then he has the moment of madness that kind of sets your team back a little bit. And arguably, you could say they were better with 10 men than they were with 11 because now they're forced to work a little bit harder. But what are your thoughts about Pepe?
Look, Pepe, when he was on the field, he helped us defensively, and I think that's a good shot. But we need him to score us goals. And Pepe, we thought he was, and Jason's right. Everyone's asking now. Even Piers Morgan was asking. I'm not a fan. No, I don't think he's Ozil's best fan, but he was asking, saying, "Hey, look, we need Ozil. You can watch. Look, everything looks flat." But Pepe.
I'm sure he's still doing pull-ups there. Don't worry, he'll be ready.
I was about to say, the guy, he's ready. He's ready when he needs to be called upon.
Yeah, but looking at Pepe, I mean, you're buying a player like Pepe for 72 million and why you spend the money on someone like that is because you're thinking 1v1s. I mean, that's what he was there for. Take a man 1v1, create a chance for us, or possibly score a goal. And we've seen him do that in some games. But for me, it's when I watch him play, it's just too many times. Every time he takes on a play, you're just not sure if he's going to retain the ball again. I mean, now against Leeds, defensively he did a job for us. I can't lie, but again, I'm asking the question: is he doing enough for us going forward? Do we need a player like Ozil in the middle to maybe support him? Yes, we do. But I don't think he's going to see that. And coming now, I've been hearing rumors of Eriksen swap for Xhaka. So there's probably, I think it is in there that they can see it themselves that they definitely need creativity in the middle. And is that the problem? I don't know, but I just think at the moment everything looks too flat, straightforward.
Yeah.
And Aubameyang is literally getting nothing. He's finishing games with 0 shots, 0 opportunities, no crosses, nothing from crosses, just 0.
Do you remember those last couple of years under Wenger where that was the constant criticism against Arsenal, where they would have all this really fancy build-up play and they never end up taking any shots, and you could almost draw a massive D around the goal where they pass the ball around and always looks really good.
You just draw a different type of D on the pitch for them. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. But it almost feels like they've reverted back to that, where they attempt to play very attractive kind of build-up play, and they've just forgotten what you do when you get there. And I think it is sad for a player like Aubameyang, because we know how good he is. We've seen him when he's got the right service and in the right kind of mood. He's unstoppable, and he's just nowhere there. He's always, last couple of years, he's been thereabouts with the scoring charts, and there's nothing. And it's the entire Arsenal squad. Something's not clicking. And
like even if I looked at,
I think.
Yeah, I think that's also one point is going to go through. Like if I look at I don't know why it is like this, but most of these players that Arsenal buy from these, like let's say, I already mentioned it. Let's say Leicester as well. He came to Arsenal, coming good defender, comes there flat. Willian as well. At times he looked dangerous. He looked very dangerous.
Bonga, you know what it is. You know what it is? It's the same. It's the issue that most of the other clubs are having, or the ones that are struggling to compete at the moment. It's those sort of leaders. They're stepping into a sort of culture. Pepe needed to walk into sort of team where there was strong leadership, where there's some guidance. He's a fairly young player, a huge price tag. So he's trying to figure this whole thing out by himself. And he's not getting guided properly by the coaches or by any of the other players, because all the other players on the field are trying to sort themselves out because it's such a mess at the moment. And that's the sort of problem is you can get a new signing coming. We're going to talk about Liverpool because, we have to talk about Liverpool. But, I mean, look at Jota, for example. Jota's walked into a team. Yeah. He was a good player. He's a great player. But now he's even better because he's walked into a team that are at their highest, and the teammates around him are performing at a certain level. And unfortunately, your new signings coming into Arsenal, there's a lot of expectation, but there's a little bit of guidance. And if whoever you sign now, you guys are hoping this is going to be the difference for our team, as opposed to going, who's going to play with Aubameyang? How's Aubameyang going to lead these guys? Yeah, sure. He's had his first shots. He didn't get much service on the weekend. But how did he lead that team on the weekend? He didn't lead that team. He didn't.
Even if I look at Aubameyang and I don't know the guy, but if you look at if you just follow him on his social networks, he just seems like he's a loving and caring guy. I mean, I don't know if he doesn't feel just, he's probably just going to embrace the guy. Hey, come play, let's play, have fun. He just seems like that kind of person. I just don't see a leadership quality. And maybe they just put the captaincy on him to try and keep him at the club. They've done it before with Cesc Fabregas and all the other guys. So I don't see why this wouldn't be the same thing. And then with what Matt was saying as well about Arteta, I still think Arteta was the right choice for the job, and I still think he probably is the right person. But again, I think at some point you need to start asking questions. Hey, Baba, there's no results, what is happening?
Wonga, Scotty asked. I think we've lost Claudio for a bit there, but Scotty asked about I don't know if you saw the incident with Kieran Tierney at the end of the game. Did you see that?
I just saw them fight. I just saw them pushing each other. I don't know exactly.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he was sticking up for Pepe. And if I'm not mistaken, was it Alioski from Leeds he was having a go at? I'm not too sure if it was something to do with sort of racist remarks of some sort. I don't know, Matt. I don't know if you see the incident.
I didn't hear what it was about. I saw the scuffle, and it was good to see him step up and get involved. And I think Tierney's one of those players where there's a potential for him to be that leader, because he doesn't shirk from that kind of side of the game. I think Arsenal's problem at the moment is that but it is good to see him get involved, get stuck in. I didn't see what triggered it. It'd be interesting to see what actually kicked that off.
Yeah, speaking about speaking about Tierney, and that's one player I think in the whole Arsenal team, in terms of attitude, it's almost similar to Robertson in the Liverpool team. That guy wants to win a game. He doesn't have to tell you. You can see he wants to win the game. You can see it, and that's what I like in a player like Tierney. I don't care. Okay, I do kind of care if he can deliver the ball and stuff, but he's got that drive in him that will last from minute 0 to 90 minutes. But I mean, all in all, sum it up, I think Arsenal definitely we were fortunate to walk away with a point there, and I think luck sometimes comes in. I think that was our day for our luck, and I will take it. I think
Leeds must be kicking themselves. I think they Leeds will look back on that as points dropped. They were up against a 10-man Arsenal. Leeds are at home. They're probably looking at it now, thinking that was our chance. We really should have taken that home.
Could have.
Yeah, which is it's probably not how we all saw. I mean, everyone except Wonga did see this coming, but But I think it's what's interesting this season is that there's a couple of sides that are there that are going to actually lay a lot of damage on the big sides. Leeds, Villa, Everton, they're thereabouts, and if you don't arrive there with exactly the right attitude and hit the game properly, you're going to get punished. And I think Arsenal, in a way, are kind of lucky to have escaped with a point. So, very interesting.
Very interesting indeed, guys.
So the big game, Claudio, you need to tell us.
Yeah. Did you guys play this?
We wrote you off, Claudio. We wrote you off. I mean, I think no one gave you a chance. You know, we spoke about it in the beginning of the game, or the beginning of pre-match Muti, and I think we all just said Leicester too much for a depleted Liverpool side. And we spoke before we started here. And how is anyone going to stop you? How?
Yeah.
I find it funny that a couple of people have gone offline now. They don't want to hear this. I wonder if it's Scott. Scott's disappeared. No, what I found very interesting about the whole scenario is based on what I said to you is that, you know, Liverpool and Klopp in particular, what he does really, really well is he knows how to take the public opinion and the press and whatever they're saying about the team and the situation they find themselves in, and he knows how to, you know, turn that into a positive for the players. So it doesn't matter if we're league champions or not. He'll tell them, go stick it to those Oaks. They're telling you shit. They're saying without Van Dijk, you can't do anything. I was like, oh, okay, shit. Well, without Van Dijk. Okay, whoa. Forget about Van Dijk. Without half of the team, they're saying you guys are in big shit. So that all the other players, and that just shows you like a good team ethos, a good team sort of man management structure, a team that's so well drilled that they can pull off any player that hasn't been playing consecutively and they can slot in for 90 minutes and keep the same level of intensity as your usual starting 11. And that's credit to the way in which they train, to sort of the atmosphere within the club and sort of the belief that they're all buying into and the amount of leaders, again, I've mentioned this, that we have in the squad. Before the game, I was tweeting with a couple of the Liverpool fans, and one of the guys said, oh no, we got James Milner at right back, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, dude, are you smoking your socks? Like, no, I remember this one game. He was awful. I said, listen, if there's no one you got to worry about is James Milner. He's the most professional guy I've ever seen. And he was amongst all, I mean, it was hard to pick who a man of the match was on the day. But James Milner, it's like, you know, we didn't even miss Trent. Trent, who's a huge source of our creativity on the right flank. We didn't even miss him. And what I liked before it as well, before the game, I started tweeting. I said, you know, there's been all this talk about Bobby Firmino and Jota and who gets the nod ahead of who and. And for me, I was going and I was like, you know what? No Salah, this is a blessing. This is a blessing because in Jota and in Bobby, you've got two of the most intelligent footballers you get currently in world football. So to see them play together, it's going to be exciting. And I think that's what ended up happening was you had two of these guys and there's a different frequency between those two in comparison to when you have a Salah on. Salah is a game changer without a doubt. But Salah is a great individual game changer. He'll have moments of spells within the game where he'll be quiet and then he'll do something by himself and bang, we're back in the game. Jota is constantly moving. And the fact that he was able to score with his head. But also, let's forget that the goal of the game has to go to, and you guys are all going to think I'm going to say one player. Who's the goal of the game going to?
Evans.
Bobby.
Hey, Wonga's the man. No, Wonga's the man.
That header was world class.
Evans.
I could have hit. Who the heck?
He knows. He knows what he's doing there. Like, and you know what I find hilarious is that like 2 seasons ago, there was all this talk about, I know I'm probably lagging on my side. I don't know if you guys can see me or what's happening, but as long as you guys can hear me, that's important because I can talk for days about this topic. What are we talking about? I can't even talk. Oh yeah, Evans. So he was linked with Man City, guys. And I always used to think he was so shit. And then all of a sudden he was linked with Man City. And then I like the fact that when he plays against Liverpool, he shows that he's not very good. That's one thing I like about that.
Yeah. I mean, you said something, Claudio, you said something which was quite interesting about Mourinho and Spurs and how the players are buying into what, you know, he wants for the team and the squad moving forward. I think you've proved it now, especially with the win against the league leaders, essentially, with, you know, a very depleted squad. If it was ever a moment of, you know, second guessing or actually just reaffirming the fact that the players are sort of, you know, buying into his way and his methods and the way he wants the team to go forward, I think that would be right now. I was speaking to Claudio, but he obviously left. But I don't know if you agree with me, Matt Wonga. I think,
big time.
You know, it's just I mean, to go and win 3-0 against a really informed Leicester squad and pretty much dominate the game. They nullified them from minute one. And, you know, I was thinking, I sat down and I was like, this is going to be a good game. It's going to be end to end. And it really wasn't. Leicester didn't really pose much of a threat. You know, there was no space for them to run in behind. I think he had fixed that sort of problem that he that he's had in the beginning of the season, where they were pressing quite high up the pitch and there was space for teams to run in behind. And I think he realized that against the Leicester, it might be suicidal to do that and rather sit in when you need to sit in and drop off when they need to drop off. But I thought it was quite incredible, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was good. It was a testament to the fact that Liverpool, I mean, Claudio touched on it, but they're a well-drilled machine, and they know, again, like you made the comparison with the Mourinho side, I think Klopp has done a fantastic job of getting the entire squad to understand what it is they're attempting to do, who does what. It's an unfair advantage to have someone like James Milner in the squad, because I'm convinced he can do any job in the world. I reckon.
Probably their goalkeeper.
I reckon if the bus breaks down, he fixes it on the way. If one of the players has a heart attack, he gets in and does the surgery himself. I just think he's just the most versatile guy in the squad. And he's, if you look at the squad, I reckon he's one of the most important players there because of the influence he has and the professionalism he brings. That we've talked before about the influence that Henderson has on the Liverpool side. I think Milner is another one there who doesn't necessarily play every week, but when called upon, he'll step up. Having not played 4 games in a row, he'll step up and be perfect in whatever it is that he's asked to do. I mean, halfway through the Leicester game, he switched from right back to centre mid. First thing he did was did that through ball for I think it was Mane he put through. I might be wrong, but it was inch perfect, and he switched his game around like that within a matter of seconds. He's just a complete consummate professional, and I think that for me, Liverpool are still the favourites for the league. As much as I'm excited about Spurs, and I think Chelsea are going to be there or thereabouts, I think Leicester have still got a lot to show. I still think that it's Liverpool's to lose in the sense that they have got a lot of injuries, but they've done this before, and they're on a huge momentum. What is it now? 67 unbeaten games at home. Is that right? Or is it
64, guys. 64, guys.
64.
And I'm back in the game. It's my time to talk. Let me shine.
That's close to 2 seasons of football. That's just short of 2 seasons of football. That's unreal.
It's huge. Yeah. So, but you haven't mentioned Bobby's goal yet today, Claudio, as much as we thought.
I'm getting to it because there's a lot of things to cover here. There's just so much to cover. I don't even know who to talk about. You got Curtis Jones, who I've criticized in the past for being young and inexperienced and not knowing about his positioning from a defensive side. He had a great game. He kept the ball moving. He retained possession. Gini did the business again. We've all got always doing the business. Also, there's rumors about him signing a pre-contract with Barcelona, by the way, because he's been offered a new deal, but he hasn't taken it at this moment in time. We don't know what's happening there. But talking about a Keita, for me, the poor guy also just can't get a break. First half, I thought he was one of the better. I said he was a standout for me in the first half. He was pressing high. He was leading everything. And then, he pulls his hammy. And that might be the overage thing that Celo was talking about, another injury for the guy, or also just be all the games that they were playing. But the second goal that we score with the Jota run, I mean, if you're going to give Robertson one of the best crosses of the ball in the game to date, if you're going to give him that much time and space, you deserve to get punished. But what was great was a guy of that size, Jota, the timing of his run and the quality of the finish, also becoming the first player in Liverpool's history to score 4 goals, consecutive home games. The only pity about all of this is that there were no fans in the stand. I can only imagine when the fans are allowed back, the sort of reception a player like that's going to get. He's been huge. I mean, let's think about Jota. And we've got to talk about signings of the season so far. You've got a Jota versus a Højbjerg. I know they're different sort of things, doing different things for the team, but the impact on both those sides have been huge. But Jota came in with everyone going, no, he's just going to be backup. He's going to be backup. And now all of a sudden we're all like, well, how are we going to fit this guy into the team because he's that phenomenal?
Well, I mean, you're the only one who's asking how are we going to fit him in because you're so scared of dropping Bobby. The rest of the world is going, well, he's in the side and Bobby can watch.
I actually personally, I could go another game without Salah, to be honest.
Well, you guys proved it,
Yeah, if you look at it, I mean, it wasn't even half time. I think it was 60 minutes. I think it was just before the third goal. They had 20 shots on target and 10 shots on target, 20 goal attempts. That's a rampage. And this with the hell with Leicester.
Yeah,
I think so it's just like those guys they were really hungry.
Vardy had 12 touches in the entire game. Their most lethal player only got 12 touches. And then when you're looking at our defense, our 2 centre backs in Fabinho and Matip, guys are going, slow defense, we play a fairly high line, they're going to punish us. Like, they were nowhere to be seen. They were completely
but
overrun.
I was saying when you jumped off, Claudio, I think from what I saw is I don't think he played that suicide line anymore. I don't think it was sort of necessary to go with a makeshift back four. And they dropped off when they needed to drop off, and they sat in when they needed to sit in. And I mean, if you're going to give a team, I mean, Leicester are arguably one of the best counter-attacking teams. They've proved it this season. To date, after 9 games, they score a majority of their goals like that. He nullified that completely. And, that's what I said to you, is Klopp going to be so stagnant in I mean, they got hurt by Villa by playing that way. Is he going to be hard-headed and narrow-minded to think that he can play like that and win the league? Or is he going to be flexible and maybe change it up? And he proved it. He was flexible, and he can. He changes it up when he needs to change it up. And I'm glad for your sake, because you murdered them. A 3-0 win is a hiding.
Well, also, bear in mind, it was a 3-0 win, but Schmeichel actually had a blinder of a game. He made some really good saves, and he, I think it could have been a lot worse. And I think sometimes Schmeichel's one of those keepers where, when you talk about the best keepers in the league, he's often doesn't make the list. We don't think of him; it's not top of mind. But he's actually solid. He's a really good keeper, and I think he showed it. He showed it this weekend. I think Liverpool could have had a lot more. If he wasn't
the 3-0 scoreline wasn't flattering at all at the end of the day for Leicester. 100% correct there. But the best part about all of this was that performance, despite everything that was said building up to the game, was Liverpool's best performance this season. And one of the most interesting things about all of that was the player who's been our best the entire season in Mane was the one that probably had the off game of the day. Yeah. So it just shows you that when you've got the right dynamic and the hunger within the squad, players are fighting for places here. They're seeing, regardless of the first team players are out, the others are going, shit, we're going to step up and we're going to really make a name for ourselves, because if we don't, we're not going to play for the rest of the season. So from that perspective, it was great. I think Klopp came out saying at the end he had to go to all the broadcasters, saying how greedy the Premier League is, how greedy the broadcasters are, because it's not just a Liverpool perspective, but the amount of injuries that are happening for all the sides. I mean, Leicester in themselves, the amount of injuries they had building up to this game, the amount of defenders that you guys have injured at Spurs, man, it's somewhat getting a bit ridiculous. We had an unnamed player that I had guys asking me who this player was. I can't even remember who he was. He was on our bench, a 19-year-old who had a good weekend with the first team while everyone was away on internationals, and he made the bench. So Klopp is saying you guys are risking the quality of the product because of how greedy you're getting in terms of the amount of games you guys are playing currently. And for me, it's just not a sustainable solution for the time, which is ridiculous. We know the sort of climate in terms of everything's happening. These guys are people, and people, when you get put under stress, regardless of how well conditioned you are, your bodies are going to find different things. And if you're already aching and breaking in like a form of a cater, the guy came out possessed first half. He pushed harder than I've seen him do his entire career, absolutely desperate to make an impact for this Liverpool side. And now he's out again for another minimum 6 weeks. Good news, though, for everyone else out there. Well, mainly every other Liverpool fan out there. Henderson's back. He's coming back. Thiago's coming back. Salah's coming back. So for us, getting the result that we got, come back. Wonga. Let me know your thoughts.
It's game over. That's what my thoughts are. Now he's going to figure out who's going to finish second, third, or fourth. But it's game over. I feel like it's just going to be a repeat. Well, obviously it won't be the same as last year, but I mean, after that performance, even against Aston Villa where they got pumped, I think like Aston Villa, there were like 4 goals that were deflected in, like horribly deflected in. And I think that added to that, but something like that's not going to happen again, not against Liverpool. And
let's point to the fact that the last time Liverpool got punished like that by a Villa, they end up going to win the European Cup and the league. So these sort of things happen to two sides for the best of them in the end, I suppose. And it's just a bit of a wake-up call to remind you that, you're not invincible. And if we talk about how the season ended, was they had an incredible run and they got complacent because no one was challenging them. Now their backs were put against the wall and they had to show up, and they did. And that's kind of what Klopp's about, and the ethos of the club is about, and also what Liverpool is as a community. That's what the fans are about. So it's all aligning. I think,
and the fans are coming back.
And the fans are coming back. So Matt, what you mentioned in terms of, Liverpool currently having already gone through the test of facing a City, a Chelsea, Everton, and the likes of, and Spurs having to do that. That's possibly going to be the defining point through all of this. December is going to be so crucial as to deciding who and what does what. Nick, how do you think this is going to pan out after December?
Oh, December is always the critical sort of phase, isn't it? It's it's a make or break for most people's season. I mean, if you look at the bottom of the table, generally, if you're bottom of the log, you are going to get relegated. If you're at the top of the log, you got a great chance. I just have this feeling that this year is going to be very different. I think we're going to see, or this season in general, I think we're going to see a lot of change. It's still a very erratic season, especially with the results. I think your term, Matt, the other day was quite surreal in the sense where, you said the league needs to sober up a little bit. And I'm not too sure if it has yet properly. And it's true that, I mean, we are a weekend away from, we are a Christmas period away from mad results because, Claudia, you're talking about injuries. If we complain about injuries now, it's not going to get any better, I don't think.
100%,
unfortunately, because the games, I mean, FA Cup's around the corner. There's League Cup quarterfinals in December, which my team's in, by the way. We're playing Brentford, so we might get to a semi-final. We've got European fixtures this week, next week, and the week after. So, I mean, there's still a lot of football to be played, and I do think by Christmas, I mean, are you asking me for a prediction, how it's going to pan out?
I'm asking after Christmas. Wonga's already writing it off, saying this is Liverpool's in the bag. Look, Liverpool's result was a huge statement.
I think it's Spurs this year. I said it a few weeks ago. The reason why, there's something with Mourinho in his second season. I saw something again today. He turns it on and he ends up finishing first. And I'm supporting your kind. I'm supporting the Potters here. I'm telling you, I think that he's gonna win it for Portugal, if that means anything.
No, if he's going to win it for Portugal, he's going to resign and then take over Portugal as a national side and compete in the Euros and then win it for Portugal, not for the Premier League. That doesn't count.
But tell me, Claudio, I wanted to ask you, do you think Klopp's going to go for the Champions League this year? Do you think last year falling short against Atletico last season was something that you needed to... Cheers, Scotty.
Cheers, Scotty. Thanks for joining us. You're absolute legend. Enjoy work.
Cheers, mate.
Do you think ultimately you could have gone further? Do you think that possibly hurt the fans? I know you won the league, but do you think he's going to go for both this season? Could he do a buy?
I think when you're a guy like Klopp, I always empathize with anyone by always placing myself in that situation, and I know how competitive I am. And I think if anything's up for grabs, you've always got to go for it regardless. You've got to manage it day by day to get yourself in the right sort of situation. At this moment in time, we're flying in the Champions League, so I don't see why not. And also, the further you go, the more money you make. And let's also not forget that with regards to COVID, a lot of rebates have to happen back to the broadcasters. Another reason why Spurs are also in the debt right now is because a lot of shit's got to be paid back. So the further, it's very crucial for Liverpool to go as far as they can in a Champions League, just financially speaking. But I do think it's going to be a sort of a manic period in the Premier League where it's not going to be... We're going to see more shocked results. I think the only thing... I think the season, like you said, is geared up for Mourinho because I was talking, saying this is going to be the season about who outscores who, and that's how they're going to win. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think when you're looking at a Chelsea and you're looking at a Spurs, it's going back to a 2004 where it's if you concede the least amount of goals in this crazy period where everything's gone out the window. If you're going to win by 1-0, you're getting the points on the board. And technically speaking, if we're looking deeper into a Spurs sort of scenario, where there were two games in which they conceded really, really late, dodgy goals. So add those points on the board, and they already have a 4-point gap technically.
Yeah.
So they're not messing around. So it's going to be an interesting scenario. So for Liverpool, injuries are going to be a big player. Rotating the squad is going to be huge. But if anything's proved by Sunday is that we've got players capable. The only problem is when we stick with our starting 11 again. So say everyone's fit, apart from the serious injuries, of course. But the other guys start coming back, and you start playing the same players. Then the guys on bench start switching off naturally. When they come off, the impact might not be as great. Right now, everything's worked out perfectly because the narrative's been there. And I think Brendan Rodgers came out complaining, saying, stop building this bullshit narrative around Liverpool, because we had just as many injuries. They're still a great side with all these injuries. The only, if we've got to look at the players man for man, the players we had playing were still phenomenal. The only one thing is, if you got to look at, you got a 19-year-old who started in the midfield, where you're like, huh. But the other guys were all great. They just weren't the regular starting players in those sort of positions. So yeah, Liverpool are just geared for, if things just work out, all these things have to fall into place. You got to have to, VAR is got to be on your side. I mean, talking about Bobby Firmino and his goals, the goal that didn't cross the line by, I think, 10 millimeters, that is the closest to date that a goal has not been given in terms of how far the ball was actually over the line. That was actually far further than the City incident where he came close to scoring against them as well. So the poor guy, I think at that point, everyone was going, this poor guy is completely jinxed. But in the end, he got his goal. He's got his goal. And you saw what happened when he scored, how everyone celebrated with him and how happy the bench were. And I think, again, it takes another huge lift off his back, and it justifies the reason for him being there. At least quietens the media a little bit. All the Liverpool fans know why he's in the team. The not so knowledgeable Liverpool fans start questioning. I think Jason, for example, said you find a way to put him in the team. You're making him a number 10. You play all four of them because cheapers, Jota, such an intelligent player. Bobby, intelligent. You've got Salah, who's athletic and good in one-on-one. Mane's good and athletic, but the other two, they're the brains, man. They're the brains, and you can afford to have two workhorses covering the defenders in front there, and then have the creativity up front. You can afford that. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. And I like how you've mentioned, I know I'm going off on a tangent, guys, but I like how you've mentioned, Nick, that, Klopp has shown he's adaptable. I think that result against Aston Villa was a bit of a freak incident. He played his normal way. They just had a really off day, I think. And it wasn't just one player who had an off day. It was the complete opposite of what happened on Sunday, where everyone had an on day. Everyone just had an off day on that day. So, yeah, it's a good time to be a Liverpool fan. I'm happy. It's not so good to be an Arsenal fan. Nick, it's a usual to be a Newcastle fan. But again, for Matinho, very, very, very good time to be a Spurs fan. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be us for today's show. Any final words before we go, lads?
May God bless my team this week. Hopefully we can try and get a point. I'll be very chuffed with a point.
That's the saddest way to sign off. We've got to do something else. We can't end the show like that.
That's why I went first.
Yeah.
Arsenal
top 4. Arsenal top 4.
Arsenal top 4.
That's what I'm going to say. Arsenal top 4. I'll keep it up. That's
cool. I'm going to go with Spurs at top of the league, so I'm going to echo Donald Trump and say, stop the count. Finish it now. Let's just give it away.
All right, guys. For those of you who are in the Champions League, enjoy the games, enjoy the football, and remember, this is the cool down. So if you don't know what to be this week, be cool.